生就此欢喜。我快乐了，我健康了，我幸福了，我美丽了。在茫茫人海之中，让我与你相遇。小小的红点里，人生变得神奇。我智慧了，我宽容了，我慈悲了，我自在了。因为有了你，生命变得更坚定，不忧忧无虑。因为有了你，日子不再有哭泣，不再有恐惧。我快乐了，我健康了，我幸福了，我美丽了。
YouTube subscription to teach you how to subscribe to Grandmaster Jimbodi's YouTube channel. And if you subscribe, then you will receive the notifications for all the live feed. So the first step is to download the app, the YouTube app. So go to App Store if it is an Apple phone, and you go to YouTube now, install. The second step is to register an account. Go to YouTube app. Now register your personal account. Put your name, your birthday, gender, and continue. Now you can register a Gmail account. You can enter and confirm your password. Now continue. Put your phone number there. After you have received the text message with the verification code, now put the verification code there and then continue. Now it's done. The account is registered. So the third step is to subscribe to Grandmaster Jimbodi's YouTube channel. Go to YouTube, search Grandmaster Jimbodi, choose the right channel, and once you go to that channel, you'll see all these wonderful teachings and live stream. Remember to click subscribe and the bell, which turn on all notifications. So the fourth step is for you to very easily and quickly see your favorable content. So click the video and then that triangle and scroll down, and you can see all the contents there. You can click on the time code. And if you like these videos, then please like, comment, and share to your friends and family. Teach your friends and family how to subscribe to Grandmaster Jimbodi's YouTube channel so that they can also establish that karmic bond with Grandmaster, and it will bring you immeasurable merits. My dear friends, hello everyone. So it's time for us to practice together again and get together. Well, this time in a year, it's back to school time. Every student might be happy. Okay, finally go back to school. I'm happy too. Okay, you still need to work hard. A lot of students, I believe, you like to go to school. Actually, if you stay home too long, it's actually quite boring. But go to school, you can see your friends, and then you can laugh. You can, also learn a lot of knowledge. So this is a very happy thing to do. But the messages that we receive, there are different, feelings that they share. So Christine said, well, let's put aside this pandemic. Maybe some schools are still doing virtual teachings, but some schools are open for in-person teachings. Well, let's put pandemic aside. Well, usually when there's no pandemic, say for example tomorrow is the first day of school, then sometimes some students, like tonight, they're still working on the homework. In China they have these summer vacation homework, and so some students will wait until the last minute to do it, and so they say, oh, tomorrow it's back to school and we're back to study. It will be very, a lot of work to do. So sometimes they feel kind of lazy. They want to wait until the last minute. That's a very bad habit, and it was very common though. So usually so Master said, do they have that habit that they always leave the homework until the last minute? Most people are like that. So Christine said these days some parents are posting some comments. It's quite interesting. They're very happy. Parents are so happy now they can send back the kids to school, and some parents even send their kids one day earlier to school, and then they leave the kids at the door, and then the parents just left, and then the children will have to walk back home wearing their backpacks on the back. So it's so funny. So for such a long time, well, for kids to stay home for so many months, it's kind of really a frustration for the parents. But now, when the school starts, it's another frustration for some other people. Well, Master says, I saw a little bit negative message. So his child, probably his grandchild, is only 11 years old. And one day, his mother asked her to go to school. And then mom, called many times. She knows that she woke up. Mom knows that she woke up and saw that the girl is still on bed. But then the girl, then all of a sudden, she saw that the girl, there was blood all over the bed, and because the girl cut her wrist. Don't be frightened. The girl was a little bit, depressed and cut her wrist, but still she was saved, her life. And before that, this girl, 11-year-old girl, actually wrote a letter to her parents, and she said, "Oh, mom and dad, there's too much pressure every day. Whenever I go to school, there's always, check homework, and sometimes they ask me questions, and I'm so frightened, and I'm so afraid that they will call me to answer the questions." And say, for example, maybe she go back home at 3:30, and maybe it took her like an hour to walk home. And then maybe she start doing homework from 4:30 or 5 and until like 11 p.m. And maybe she still couldn't finish all, or some of them are still not good enough. And so she felt like, when will be the end of this? I'm still like, I'm only 11. Do I need to wait until 20 years old? There's so many years to go. And it's even worse than prison. And so the girls felt like life is so hard, and she felt so sad. And maybe it's also because the teachers did not, praise her or acknowledge her work, and maybe she didn't do the homework well, and ask her questions she didn't answer, and so the teacher punished her, and maybe and so she felt very bad. And after a few times like this, she felt maybe dying is better, and then she doesn't need to write homeworks anymore. And when I heard this story, I also felt very upset. Why should we live such a life? Why should we study? For the children, they have so many pressure from parents, from school, from teachers. Do they really need to study? Maybe we can discuss about it. Let's, open, and to any opinions. And whether it's right or wrong, it's okay. Well, if we cannot find out whether it's right or wrong, then let's discuss. That girl finally, her life was saved, and so she was fine. I'd like to ask that friend, so her parents might ponder whether the girl still need to study. Well, the girl is definitely, very stressed, and the parents are very stressed too. Would you ask her to go to school or and be stressed, or maybe rather protect her so at least she can be alive? And so it's like with the pandemic, whether you want to go to school and it's risky, or stay home. And it's actually, you can protect your life. I would say maybe life is more important, but if there's no risk of, life, then what should we do? Yeah, let's discuss about it. If you are a mother, what would you think about, the students' pressure? So Joyce, would you like to share your opinion? So Joyce said, well, I think that they still need to go to school because they need knowledge. And when they grow up, at least they have some skills so that they can make a living. But this is not about whether they should go to school or not, but if the pressure is too much, if it's like leading to suicide actions, then that's probably too much. And Now it's actually, we now have a very good way, a virtual classroom, so you can avoid the risk of corona, and then you can still learn the knowledge. I'm actually very lucky. When I was in school, but I still, were always scolded and criticized by the teachers, but I still went through. When I saw some parents, I saw some very good parents. I really want to learn from them because they are always trying to de-stress their kids, because in the schools, there are always exams and tests, and teachers give lots of homework and pressure to the children. And sometimes the children, work so late and they were so sleepy, and the next day they were always sleepy. And sometimes parents are like writing homework together with the children, and so and they thought about some very different tricks, like they use 3 pens writing together because they need to copy the textbook 3 times, so they use 3 pens. And sometimes they would say, oh, if you go to school, if the teacher would scold you, then I'll go with you. So sometimes well, they still encourage the children to go to school, but still they try their best to give some space to the child and try to help the child to de-stress. I thought, oh, if well, as a parent, I want to do that too. I want to help the child to de-stress too. I don't want the children to be stressed out. Well, Christine said, well, Joyce is a very good parent, and if a child has such a good parent, then the child is lucky. But during the time when I grew up, I'm not criticizing my parents, but whatever the teachers say, it's like an order, and whatever the teachers say, I have to do it. And so the parents always, require the same thing from the children. But during the time when I grew up, even though there are difficulties, sometimes I would also cry or maybe, feel very upset. But after some training under such pressure, I'm getting more resilient. It probably is because of these pressure that this resilience grows with the pressure. Grandmaster said, yeah, actually, I'm actually thinking about this. It's pretty hard to, explain it just in one sentence for the children, this pressure from school. As parents, we understand very well, and we sometimes feel the same as what they feel. And now we understand the pressure. But why parents still want to put that pressure on the children? I would say maybe the parents want the children to learn more knowledge, whether to go to university or not. Well, the more knowledge, the better, right? The more knowledge, maybe, practically, the more knowledge you can, the easier for you to make a living and to find a job. And so go to school or study. It's actually mostly for our future work. It's for, being able to find a job. Some people say, oh, you don't want to go to university. You just want to, have a very easy way to sell something. But still, you need some basic skills. When the society is like a regular, normal society, if you want to be outstanding, if you want to make more money, then those employers will become very knowledgeable employers. It's not like in a very specific time, in China, they just need to fight. They just need to be aggressive or something, like they fight hard and then they can earn money. But in a peaceful time, then you actually earn money based on your knowledge. And how can you get the knowledge? You need to learn. But the process of learning, you go to school, it's like it's a very good way, like systematically you learn knowledge. And sometimes we can learn very so a lot of people actually, they are accepting not very actively. For the children, if they can make decision whether they want to go to school or not, and if they don't have the pressure of finding job, I would say maybe 90% of the kids will at least stay up. No, I mean they would probably sleep until middle of the day, and then they probably only go to school for 2 hours and then go back home. Maybe you have other opinions. So Joyce said, oh, I actually saw an example. I don't want to say their names. So the father is a very famous singer in China, and he's of my generation. Maybe, my generation is like we always experience high pressure, and so he thought his own children, he want them to be free of those pressure. And so even from his when he was very young, he already has decided, and so he said he would let the child to decide whether the child wants to learn and what he wants to learn. But the child actually, because of the genes, so he actually has very good music genes, but when the child is already 20 years old, he couldn't do anything. Now the father is starting to regret, because in his childhood, he didn't put any pressure on the child, and so the child cannot bear any pressure, and the parents didn't force him or didn't guide him or lead him to overcome difficulties. Now the child is already grown up. It's a 20-year-old, and now they found that this 20-year-old cannot bear any pressure. And so this is a pity. So Christine said, I totally agree with Joyce in this. When we see many, we have some, fundraising projects, and we want to support children in the countryside in very poor areas. And say, for example, in the mountains, the kids need to walk 2 hours from their home to the school, and maybe they need to cross a river. I know in some areas, even when they're crossing the river, it could be just like, just some ropes there. And sometimes there's only a very simple bridge. And for parents who always are afraid of children, they don't want children to, have any difficulties. They might not want their children to go to school with so many difficulties. But those kids in the countryside, even there's a storm, a huge, wind or rain, but they still will go to school, because those kids understand that they need to change their lives through learning, through going to school, through the knowledge, because otherwise they will have to stay in that countryside or in the mountains forever, for the whole life. And so those kids from very poor condition families, they actually are even more resilient, and they have that, hunger for knowledge. And actually learning is not only knowledge. In any industry, if you want to learn how to do it, you have to bear some pressure. Like Lang, he was practicing piano, and he actually tried to rebel when he was just a child. And, it's not easy. In any field, or maybe playing chess, or I think there's a Chinese old saying says like 1 minute on the stage, 1 minute of success on the stage maybe means like years of hard work, under the stage. And so I heard that they need like at least 100,000 hours of effort and hard working to finally reach some success. So Christine says, for a child, whether they would be very actively learning and how well they can react under pressure. And so this is what parents need to contemplate. And some parents, parents, your children the best. Some kids need to be encouraged. Even though they're not very good right now, and they just had a small progress, and the parents would, praise them, and then the kid will be encouraged and want to work harder and work more. But some people, maybe some kids need more pressure, and so what your child is like, parents might know the best, and then you need to fine-tune the ways to, parenting, whether you need to give them a candy today or maybe a stick today. So Joy said, yes, I do agree. And parents are not easy. You're actually learning in the whole process. And how to parent is very important. And if children always leave the homework until the last minute, it's not good. And they always wait until, some kids, they didn't do homework when they just come back from school, and maybe they would read some books and watch TV, and then they might get too sleepy at night. So a very balanced arrangement would be very important. And if they work too late, like it's already 11:30 p.m., maybe parents would need to help them to make better arrangements. And also at 11:30 would say, well, you need to go to bed, because otherwise tomorrow you won't be able to have a very clear mind. Grandmaster says, well, I actually I'm going to say something, some of my true understandings. I'm going to share from my heart. So a few days ago, I met a parent from the United States, and he came. He's a Caucasian. He came with his child, and his child is a student from a very prestigious university. But the child has already committed a few times, committed suicide quite a few times. And so the parent, of course, is terribly frightened. And he asked some counselors, but it was not effective. And so I said, oh, okay, I'll check. And that was a girl. So the child was a girl. And so she's a good girl. And the family also is pretty well in their financial situation. And so I asked the girl, why do you want to commit suicide? She said, did you take drugs? He said, yeah, I did. And I even sell drugs. Why do you take drugs? He said, oh, that can help to de-stress. But why drugs can help you to distress? And what is your pressure? You have good living condition. You are also very pretty. You have a boyfriend, a nice boyfriend. Why do you choose to do that? And she said, oh, I just have, a kind of terror. I always fear that I will lose something. At home, I'm afraid that I'll lose my mom, and if I go out, I'm afraid I'll lose my boyfriend. And so she has lots of fears. And after I talked to her in depth, I found the problem. I didn't want to correct her habit of taking drugs. I didn't want to teach her whether he needs to go to school. I asked her, do you have a very, outstanding skill? And she said, no. She said, well, the only thing I have is a kind heart. But you cannot show people your heart, right? Do you have any knowledge or skill? She said, no. But why you always have these fears of losing? Do you know? I know that this kind of feeling is because that she's not confident, including the suicidal thoughts, the fear of losing. It all comes from lack of confidence. Why is she not confident? Because she doesn't have any, specialty. So I said, just work hard and you'll have some specialty. Like, say, for example, you like some arts or singing, or how many hours have you tried practice singing? And say, if you like dancing, how many hours you practice dancing? So you need to work hard on something. And then the girl said, why should I work hard? I'm an American. I'm a modern people. I want to live an easy life. Why should I give myself pressure? I said, if you study hard, if you work hard on learning a skill, it's exactly for the purpose of having a better life. A better life actually has many elements, like abilities and if you have the skill, you have specialties, then you will be confident. Those people who always have a straight back when they're walking on the street, they're usually very confident. And say, for example, I'm an accountant, so if you need to do taxes, then you can come to me. And dentists would say, okay, I'm a dentist. I know all of these techniques. And so if you have toothache, you can come to me. And if I'm very good at taekwondo, well, your children want to learn taekwondo. You want to find a good instructor, so you can come to me. Or say, for example, I'm a good business person, and no one can earn more money than me. And, well, if you want to buy something, I can always buy something, the best, the best thing in that category. Or if you cannot sell that commodity, then I can. And so in any industry, there are, good ones. And there's a girl in the United States, grew up in the United States, and she went to China to take part in a singing contest. And so she's, of course, because she grew up in the United States, she spoke English. Only her grandfather, her grandma would speak a little bit Chinese with her, and with the Shandong dialect. And so she can only say a few words. And so she went to China. She said she has a really good voice, and she can sing beautiful English songs. But in China, because a Chinese singing contest, so she wants to learn Chinese songs. And so she learned the characters and the pronunciations. And So she said, I really love singing and I love performance. I really love to see everybody love my singing. So this song, for a whole month, I practice and practice and practice, and I don't even sleep. I don't even care about sleep or eating. I just want people to love my singing. And so she copied the song like hundreds of times, and she found a teacher, a tutor, to teach her Chinese. And the teacher, that tutor, is already like very tired. And so in 3 years, she was already able to read Chinese and speak Chinese. And so she said, I can work hard. There's nothing that I cannot do well because I love singing. So I want to do something like for this passion. I can do anything because I just love those applauses. I love people. My audience would love my singing. So that girl, as an American Chinese, she said, right, and she achieved her goal, and she sang so beautifully. The song that she sang, what was the song? I crossed the ocean to come and see you. So that was the song. And she sang much better even than the original singer. And she's just so, and if you hear, it's just so beautiful. She really knows how to sing, but she didn't know how to speak Chinese before. If she didn't tell us the background, audience will never knew that she couldn't speak Chinese. She just learned from scratch. Wow. Really. So she said, I love this, so I will work hard on this. As an American Chinese, she wants to go to China, and Chinese people will love her songs too. So she said, if I love this, I will work hard, work the hardest. And so that's her philosophy. Maybe that's the philosophy of the United States, and she did it. Well, that reminds me of there's a basketball star, Kirby. He has already passed away, but he worked very hard, and I think he's like a genius. And he said, anyone who knows Los Angeles at 4 a.m., why he knows? Because he got up every day and run at 4 a.m. every day. And do you know how many injuries he already had? He cannot take flights or cars, or he had just so many injuries. Well, ordinary people cannot bear it. When he sit in a car, he would be dizzy, and his whole body would feel painful. He couldn't. He couldn't bear it. And so when he goes to a competition, he would always take a flight because he cannot bear many hours of car ride. And it's all because of the injuries that he already had. And so Christine says, as a student, you need to understand that studying is your responsibility. We try to enjoy that. And if you really are stressed out, you can speak out, talk to your parents, talk to your teachers. Some kids are a little bit introvert, so when they have stress, they just bear it themselves. But at this time, I would actually recommend you to be more open and optimistic and talk to people who can help you. Maybe that's your parents, or maybe that's your classmates, or maybe that's your teacher. Don't just hide it inside, because then otherwise you would feel like you are having a bitter life. You have to bear all the hardship yourself. So I hope the children need to find a balance. If the pressure from study is already heavy enough, think about your parents, your mom. say every morning your mom will prepare your breakfast and prepare your lunch, and after she finished whole day's work, she needs to come back home and prepare supper for the whole family. And then there are other house chores. And so for her, for mom, from morning till night, she's like fighting the whole day, working hard the whole day. Your father, he's probably taking a very important role in the work, and in that work, his pressure and pain, it could be tremendous. But whenever he comes back, he would still the next day he still needs to be enthusiastic and energetic to go out and earn money for the whole family, to support the family, so that he can support your school and so that you can have a good life. So think about your parents. Then children would think, okay, we need to also find a good way to deal with our pressures and stress. So talk about parents' pressure, from work, from life, from parents, from their children. And so I also like to remind parents that you need to be also very strong in your heart and be very kind, and especially towards your family and children. And if parents can be more relaxed and be open, then the children would be willing to tell you, because otherwise the child probably would be too frightened and dare not tell you anything, and so they have to bear everything themselves. And so parents and children need to work together. So you're talking in details as moms. You need to understand your children's pressure and their emotions, their mood. Do they have a way to release their stress? And I should think this way too, but I don't think this is the way. It's not the great way. You cannot just always pamper your child. Even if you pamper them every day, they would think, oh, why should I do this? I want to talk about why we should work hard. Why should we take the pain? You probably have watched the, Shaolin Kung Fu in the movies. It has nothing to do with the movie. And when they are taking that movie, they would also wear those clothes. They are just some students. A lot of them are poor and they're not very good at schools, and maybe their parents are farmers, and they found that the children are not very, not very good at school or studying, and especially boys, their family maybe they watch the movies and they think, oh, I want to be a kung fu master, or they want to be a hero like in a war, or maybe become a film star, or they sometimes would even think that they want to be a killer or something. They don't know what they want to be, and so according to their passion or their desire, then they think, okay, if you like Kung Fu, then I'll send you to those, Kung Fu classes everywhere. Yeah. And actually in China, those students in the Kung Fu school, I think in China there are more than 100,000 students. Those who have been trained more than 6 years are more than 100,000. But how many of them have become Kung Fu masters that who can win like the champion in the competitions, or maybe they can be bodyguards for those celebrities, or they can quickly control robbers or those. And so there are very few of them. But even those who have not become the Kung Fu master, they still would take so much pain. You know, those children, when they climb the mountain, if there's just a little bit slope, if you walk uphill, you would feel more tired. And I know that generally speaking, those Shaolin schools, those instructors would find all different ways to train these children, their their endurance, their flexibility, their and so their persistence and their strength and how much they can bear other people's beating and their speed and their reaction speed. And so all these trainings are not easy before they become great masters. Even just for like maybe in 3 seconds, they can like beat you down, and they have already like trained for 6 years, and every day they are taking the pain. So Christine asked, in this training, is it hard? Is it painful? Well, Grandmaster said, you can give it a try. And so in our age, even if you're not hiking, just like 15 steps, go up the stairs. And if you want to run faster, maybe you would even, injured your back or maybe your leg, or, anything can happen. But those teenagers, every morning, they're training their endurance. And so one of them is to carry like 10 kilograms of bricks or stones or something, and then they would running uphill. And so one of the instructors said, one of the teachers said, I sent my kid to that Kung Fu school, and every morning they would run uphill. And so the child said, Dad, don't come to see me, because if you come, then it will embarrass me. But then that makes the dad very curious, and so he went there. Those children just run up the hill like they're running on the flat surface, and they go up and then down 30 minutes. And his father was also riding on the bicycle and going up, and just going up, it took him like 2.5 hours, and he was like so tired, and he was wondering how can he go down. But the kids, they can run like only in half an hour. And if you ask those children whether they're tired, and if you ask that, they will be in tears, and they will say, oh, I want to go back home. I'd rather go to school and study because Kung Fu training is too hard. And then the father said, oh, my child, you've been here for 5 years. You're halfway. If you say you don't know anything, you already know quite a few. But still, if you go out, you cannot be a Kung Fu master yet. And you probably can only be a guard for a company. And, you're not very professional yet. You should keep on. Keep going. And so this child is already 1.8 meters. But the instructor is so, so strong and tactful, and he can just raise his arm, and then that young man would fall and say, you still need to work hard. So the father said, you need to work hard. But then he asked me, so what should I do? What would the future be? And maybe you need to work hard. If you if you want to be a teacher, I can find maybe 3 other people and see if you can knock them down like immediately. Because if you want to be that good, at least maybe you'll need to train for at least 10 years and even better than your instructors, not just endurance, but still you need to have some very special skills. And in any field, you would feel like there's always someone better than you. If you have a kung fu school, sometimes there are other even stronger people will come and compete with you. In Taiwan, there was a kung fu master. He had a kung fu school, but there are so many people compete with him. He actually practiced and trained for more than 10 years, and he was very, very strong, and he was very aggressive. And even so, he couldn't manage a kung fu school very well. Even if you have the physical condition, but you can it doesn't guarantee that you have a very good kung fu school. You need to be able to, socialize. You need to have the management skills, and marketing and everything. And maybe a kung fu master, he himself is very good in kung fu, but he's not very good at teaching. And let's come back to why we should take the pain, why we should work hard. So Christine said, in order for us to have a way to, make a living, Grandmaster said, just now you mentioned the youngest, almost the best pianist, Long in China. And he said, well, if you say I'm a genius, no, nonsense. I'm actually forced to become like this. But after so many years of training and I get to a certain level, I started to feel, now I can see light. And he started to become the #1 in many competitions. And then he would apply to some most famous musical schools, and then they would find that, oh, this child has the potential. And so other people say he's a genius, but he said that's nonsense. Well, I think true genius is built on, like 100,000 or 200,000 hours of hard work, and you found also the best teacher, and you also work hard. Well, work the hardest, and then you might turn out to be what other people will call you a genius. And Long is very fortunate. He not just worked hard, and all the piano instructors and teachers were also very good, and that makes him today's, one of the best pianists. Sometimes maybe you also worked very hard, but the teacher is not very good. Maybe you cannot even be #1 in the city, let alone #1 in the world. Maybe you cannot be famous, but you could be just a piano teacher. So there are so many of these people, are like this, just a piano teacher after years of hard work. But that's still good. At least you can make a living. In any field like running or swimming or, all these sports, when they become the champion, I think in China, you would say they only probably in China, they probably can get a house, but other than that, there's nothing. And sometimes they will go to an opening ceremony, maybe once. And so just do one skill very well is not easy. And maybe you are already good at it, but then this whole industry will be no use. And so maybe for those barbers, they use the knives to cut people's hair. And then once you start to get very good at it, and then now they're using other tools. And say, for example, you're driving, horse carts. You're very good at it now, but then they're using cars now. So you probably all the effort are in vain. you would say. So now let's come back to why should we work hard? Only those people who really worked hard, they understand. If you work hard and then finally you can make a living, it's already a fortune. My father's, my father said, in his childhood, his parents couldn't even support him, even though they work hard in the farm, and so they sent him out to learn some other skills. And so my father would help them to do all the house chores. That was close to Tianjin. There was no, this modern toilet, and so they have those wooden toilet, not the modern ones, and it's very smelly. They have to bring that to the special washrooms, and it's a very hard work to do. But why did he want to do it? Because he wants to learn the skill from that teacher, and once he learned that skill, then he can make a living. Maybe you want to become a carpenter, or maybe some other skills, then you can make a living. So that's why we work hard. A few days ago, I saw, the girl I mentioned just now, that university student, she said, why should I work hard? I want to enjoy my life. And there are lots of things that we think that we shouldn't do. She always do those. And so she didn't study, and she would drink, and she would take drugs. And I said, why do you always drink? And she said, I want to enjoy wine with my friends. And actually, she felt very sad in her heart because she felt very bored. Her family is actually financially pretty well. She doesn't need to worry about, surviving. And then she couldn't find a direction. So I would say sometimes poor families will create heroes, or create some children that want to create, because the family is too poor. So if they don't work hard, they will have to starve. And Christine said, Grandmaster, your teaching is so wonderful. The condition in their family makes the children from poor family would think that I need to work hard, and then I can support myself and my family. I remember in a previous live stream, I forgot which one though, there was one child, his brother and his sister both went to university, and then his father said, maybe the youngest one will not go to school. Just because of that, he wants the youngest son not to go to school, and then he had that resentment towards the father. And so having an opportunity to go to school is so precious. And he thought that's the only way out. And every day he would have to work in the fields. And even he worked from morning till night, he cannot support the whole family. I don't know about future, but in the past, that's why they always want to study, and then they learn some skills or do some business. That's why they do that. If they just work in the fields, they cannot support the family. So that's why they think that they'd rather go out and find a job in a city. And even though the job is very hard, they think it's still better than working in the fields. And so for the students now, if you have any pressure from, doing homework, and if you cannot bear it, if you think about in the future, you go to the society and do any kind of work, you might have to face all kinds of difficulties and challenges. And Grandmaster said, okay, this young girl from the university in the United States. He said, "Oh, my family is quite well off. Why should I work hard?" And one of my disciples around me, and she said, well, she actually worked very hard and rest very little. And this student said, "Oh, why she work so hard?" And then my disciple said, "Because I have my mission, or I have my vow in my heart, so I have all the enthusiasm to work hard, and I have the incentives or motivation to do everything." Well, let me tell you, to make your family wealthy, this process is like hiking or building a mansion, building a high-rise building. It needs to, well, you need to work hard, and it's risky. But to destroy your career or your family assets, it could be done in one day. So create assets. It's very long and torturing and tedious, and and then you can accumulate these assets, and then you can have such a good living condition. But overnight, you can lose all the assets too. I've seen many examples. You see those wealthy person in your country, you see how many would lose their money overnight, how many would be put into prison. There are just so many. If your assets are lost instantly, it's not what you have imagined. You don't want that. But, anyone can have that possibility. And then maybe you don't, if you encounter, well, today you don't want to work hard, you don't want to do anything, you don't even want to eat. But one day you would find that you cannot even find the bowl for having any food. Well, at that time, Christine said, then you would fear of losing. So that's why my great grandmaster taught me, to build a country is not easy, right? So my great grandmaster Ren told me, actually, to build a country is a lot of people would think it's hard, but actually it's easier to build that country, but to preserve and sustain that country is even harder. So say, for example, it's easier for your parents to eventually build this family, but to keep all these assets are not easy. You need knowledge, you need wisdom, you need tolerance. Some people would say, "Oh, they have the intelligence, but they don't have the courage. And if you cannot bear, then you can't do it." And some people, they suddenly encounter some big challenges, and then they can't bear it, and then they couldn't handle it. Those people who can, deal with big challenges, they need to be really, really resilient. Your parents, they are from poor families, and from their childhood, they are already used to, being criticized, being used to the pressure, and so they are very resilient. But you are different. After you were born, you're like a prince. You're like a prince or a princess. No one would blame you. No one will give you pressure, and so you're not used to those. If one day, like overnight, you lose all of the money, then you would feel like it's the end of the world. So I remind you all, if you want your life to be wonderful, if you want to be always successful, then you need to have a skill. You have your specialty. And that's not enough. Still, you need to have more knowledge. So, having the knowledge will transform your life, and your ability will transform your life. And your power and ability to do things will become your confidence. So, in Kung Fu, don't just talk that you have good Kung Fu skills. Come and compete. In our life, we're also competing. Maybe there are many competitions in our life to, to compete your abilities, your charm, your knowledge. And if you want to make a living or have a better life, there will be countless times you need to compete and risk having a failure. So if you want to be always successful, you need to establish a very solid skill. Like in Shaolin Temple, they first train their endurance. If you know the movements, but you cannot jump, you cannot run fast, if you just know how to do it, but you don't have the strength, you don't have the speed, how can you be that Kung Fu master? You can probably be the Kung Fu master in a computer game only. So if you don't have the actual speed and strength, then you are not the actual Kung Fu master. What I'm saying to you now, I hope you now can understand that knowledge can change your life, and your ability will turn into charm. Your knowledge will turn into fame, your money, your position, and even, wisdom and liberation, because it can build assets for the society, and maybe more so, you can learn singing or dancing or accounting or carving or mechanics or designing. All of these skills you need to learn. Today, no matter how successful your parents are, you need to be prepared in case there will be a change. Sometimes when the father passes away, the whole family situation will completely change. You were a very wealthy child before, and all of a sudden you become very poor. What can you do? Then you have to depend on yourself. In Vancouver Center, a few years ago, at the back of the Vancouver Center in that alley, every night there's a young man, I think in his 20s or 30s, and there was a wrecked car, and he always just sleeping in the car. And I think, oh, what is he doing? Why he's sleeping all day? And whoever goes there, he would just shake his head and not say anything. And then there was a brother who knows him, and he said, oh, when I see him, I want to cry. His parents used to be a very, wealthy business person. Like he has probably millions of dollars maybe. And then in the business, because of some small mistake, a big investment failed. And then the father, the business was closed, and then the father died after 2 years. But the son used to be, like a prince, and every day he would drive a very luxurious car and always wear those brand name clothes and just enjoy life. So after his father passed away, he doesn't have any assets, doesn't have anything. He doesn't have a house, and his brothers and sisters all have left him, and nobody care about him, and he has no skills. And some of his brothers and sisters, some of them learn some skills so they can find a job, but he knows nothing. And he now just lives in the car, and nobody would care about him, and nobody would, and they all think, oh, how come he's like that? How come he's not like his father? His father was like a hero, and he's now just like a homeless person. I don't know where he is right now. I worry that whether he's still alive, because after all these setbacks, he probably had mental problem too. He cannot bear this huge change in his life. So whether you have good family conditions or not so good, you need to be prepared for anything that can happen. Even if your parents leave you like big assets, you need to have the ability and knowledge and to be able to manage such a big asset. And then your parents, even if they pass away, then they would still feel very very happy and settled. If your parents didn't leave you with a big asset, but a big debt, what can you do? And maybe you would think, oh, just slowly return and pay off the debts. And some people are very capable or resilient. They not only pay off the debt, but they even create another big asset. So I know someone in Taiwan. He was very, very famous. His father was a very wealthy business person. And at the beginning, he was like, oh, just riding on those luxurious cars. And, he was like that. And after his father passed away, it was also the same. And his whole family was like, oh, having nothing left. And this young man was even put into prison for several years. And these several years in jail actually is good for him. He finally awoke from, enjoying life with luxury cars and girls, and all of a sudden he was in jail and wearing those prisoners' clothes. And if one day he hasn't been beaten, he would already feel, oh, it's a lucky day. And now finally he awoke. But that time, his father already passed away. And so before he leave the jail, he already made a plan. He thought, oh, I need to continue to be a wonderful business person. My father used to be a famous business person. I should be just like him or even better. And so after he came out of the jail, he had no money at all. But today, I think under his name, he has at least 3 5-star hotels, and he has a lot of stocks for many big companies. And so he's very famous. He really worked hard. And this person also is also very intelligent, and of course, he worked extremely hard. I cannot tell you more because you then will guess who he is. So, there could be those unexpected things at all times. In your life, there always can be things like that. Only when you work hard, then you can be successful. If you can be even harder, work even harder. Other people sleep 10 hours. You sleep only 5 hours, and you use the time to learn some skills or some knowledge. And maybe one day you will all of a sudden become outstanding, and you would think, oh, why should I take that pressure? Turn that pressure into your motivation, and then to allow me to be outstanding. I'm just under one person, but then I'm like better than hundreds of people. And then you can become a very successful person. Then your money, your name, everything will become the best. And then you have a very glorious life, and you're not afraid of failures. You're not afraid of anything, because you know that I have the power. I can do it. I know. The hardest material in the world is diamond. The Russian scientists, and I think many scientists, they have already find out ways to make artificial diamond. They just to turn carbon into like high temperature and high pressure. Say, for example, 60,000 degrees, and then after 1 year or 2 years, and then they can turn into diamond. In Russia, they made many artificial diamonds. That's how they make it. So human beings, if you put yourself into also this high pressure, and if you cannot bear it, then that's a pity. That tolerance is actually also through some training. Gradually you build your tolerance. In Kung Fu, there was a kind of Kung Fu. It's like whatever other people beat you or kick you, you're not afraid. So how can you have that ability? You're not afraid of beating or kicking or anything like that. So at the beginning, the training was like, then they use a stick, but then they put some cloth. They wrap the stick with some cloth, and then they would hit your belly and the back. And then they put some thick wood and beat their own head. And they also learn how to manage their qi, but they also learn how to handle the beating. And eventually the beating becomes stronger and sronger. It's like on a gradual process. It's not like all of a sudden. Because otherwise, if they beat him too hard, they would be injured. So this kind of Kung Fu is trained through days and months and years of training. And they even hire people to beat them. And so our tolerance, our ability to handle pressure can also be trained through bearing those pressure. So sometimes they even, when those people even hire instructors to beat them, and the Thai style wrestling, it's very, very strong. If they kick you, the bones can break. I think it would be like 300 kilograms of strength. And if they kick the arm will break. And how can they achieve that? They all through gradual days and months and years of training. And so if you set a goal, and then you should give yourself some pressure. Say, for example, after 10 years, I want to be a pianist, or I want to become a Kung Fu master. And after 5 years, or after 5 years, I need to open a company. I have my own company, and I need to make money. And maybe maybe you haven't become a Kung Fu master or something, but you have already accumulated enough knowledge to become someone similar to that. And if you want to be a Kung Fu master, you would, of course, you will study, oh, what kind of skill do I need to have? What training do I need to take? So they would probably hit the bricks like every day. And so when they are hitting other people, the chest is not as hard as the brick. And so before, I think there was a legend. They say someone is training a Kung Fu with one finger. And that young man, he's only very single-minded. And so he didn't know any Kung Fu movements. He forgot anything that was taught to him, all of those movements. And, I'm like that. I can only meditate. I don't know anything else. And so his instructor was so annoyed. Well, because you paid me, because otherwise I don't want to teach you at all. Because he taught him anything and he would forget. And so the instructor's wife told him, just teach him. Okay, he said, I will teach you one thing. You just use one finger to, poke the bricks, okay? If you cannot remember how many bricks, so every morning you just walk around the wall and then you poke on every single brick. And, this instructor have other disciples, and they know all the movements, and he found that, oh, these disciples are really good. They know all the movements. But that disciple can only poke the brick. And then one day, there was someone from another city come to compete with them, with this Kung Fu master. And so that man from another city, he was carrying a knife, and he was like very aggressive, and he threw away his clothes. And you see, his muscles were like very big. Grandmaster said the muscles were like you're stacking those steam buns. And so he's competing with his Kung Fu master. After an hour, he beat the Kung Fu master, and his Kung Fu master is like bleeding. And then the disciples all came out to try to fight with the other man. And all the disciples were beaten, because the Kung Fu master couldn't even compete with him. And then that very silly disciple. And so he actually wanted to beat down the Kung Fu master. This right before that man's fist reaching the Kung Fu master's face, that silly disciple, he was poking the bricks every day. He poked this man's fist, and his finger goes through the fist. He has never. So he just poked a whole finger, a whole bloody hole in that fist. That man has never seen such a strong finger. And that disciple said, "Oh, I can also make a hole in your head, maybe in your eyes or in your head." And that man said, "Oh, no, no, no. Oh, sorry. Who are you?" And then that silly disciple said, "Oh, that's my master." And then the man from the other city said, "Oh, your master is couldn't compete with me, but your disciple is so strong and so powerful." And so this very, what the so-called stupid disciple, he trained 7 years or 8 years poking the bricks every single day. And so what he can do is that every brick he can poke a hole. And so years of training and years of practice. And he became the true Kung Fu master. In any industry, if you can practice and work hard for 10 years or even just 8 years, you become very good at it. I'm not saying that you want to, win that competition or fight others. At least you can make a living. So anyone who has a skill, if you work hard and practice for 5 years even, then you are already very good at it and people will clap on you. And if you practice for 10 years, you're almost like a master. So all of these achievements are acquired through all of the hard work and pain. So it's like you're turning that black charcoal, that carbon, turning that into diamond from a useless person to a truly gifted person. And once we become that gifted person, that, accomplishment, that feeling of accomplishment and success, you would feel so good. Maybe you would, at that time, you would already forget what I said today. But if you can be like that, I feel so happy. When you have that ability, you would have the charm. Sometimes you say, why he says that, other people would listen. But when I say other people don't listen, because it's because of his charm or his ability. So sometimes it's like, if you say something, other people doesn't want to listen. But a president, if he says something, they all listen. So you need to work hard and have more accomplishments. And then if you are very good at that, you become the master in that industry, then all your experience will become a textbook for others. And so that's why all the students, why should you study hard? Why should you do your homework? Everybody is playing. Maybe other people are playing, and why should I do homework? My master told me, more stupid birds or more slower birds need to fly early, right? So go ahead and practice. If you cannot remember, if you are not intelligent, then you start working earlier. You work more hours, and then at least you can make a living. And so do more. Those people, if you are very smart, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can have great achievements. And, in this world, snails can survive together with deers. Who will live longer? I don't know. Not necessarily. Everybody has their own way of living. And so slower birds need to fly earlier. So we're not afraid when we're not smart enough. But we know ourselves. We understand our strengths and weakness, and we work hard. And if you want to accomplish something, I hope you work hard and study and to even surpass your parents. And so, do you have that confidence? So from now on, set a goal and make the pressure into your motivation. After a few years, maybe you'll become a very successful person. And then, well, a successful person, it's like you're glowing. Even if you're very smart, you haven't worked hard, you haven't reached that success, you'll never be glowing. Your face will be down. So, I hope from today on, you understand that knowledge will change your life. And your abilities will turn into charisma. So our parents need to care for our children. And even if you could change the way of raising your children, every parent wants their children to become successful. It's the same for all parents. All normal, ordinary parents want the best for their children, want the most happy, the most successful. Some parents might ask, my child is very lazy. How can I teach my child to do some housework so that he can become more creative and more productive? But when I try to get him to do things with me, but he doesn't listen, what should I do? My suggestion is that you should work with your child together. But what if we fight when we are working with our children, especially between fathers and sons? What should we do? Well, I have a way. You have to think in your child's shoes. No matter how much you love your children, and sometimes our love is very heavy, and so we need to use the right method. Sometimes our method has a lot of blaming because our love for our children is too much, because we want them to be successful too much. And you want your child to learn something in 3 minutes when you have learned it yourself in 3 years. Although this is not logical, but it's all because of your love for your child. And that's why you always blame your child. It's so easy. How can you not know how to do it? How did you learn it? And sometimes you might even doubt if your child is smart. So we need to change our methods. So I suggest that when you're working with your child or when you're teaching your child, pretend that that child is your neighbor's child. Then our attitude and our method will be more gentle. You might be more gentle with more guidance, and you will find a systemic approach. When you have too much wish and too much love for your child, you forget about methods. You either scold them or you hate them. You forgot about these logical scientific methods. So I hope that all parents, when you're treating your children, change your attitude and change your method. Pretend that as if you are teaching your neighbor's child. I bet that the result will be completely different. You will realize that your child is learning faster because you're using a logical method. Why do sometimes when you teach your child something, you can teach for an hour, but your child doesn't understand? But when they go to when they have a tutor, they can understand it very fast. It's actually the same like a doctor cannot treat his own family. It's because you love the other person too much. So it's the same for our children. When we're treating our children, use the method. Treat them as if it's your neighbor's child. And pretend that they have paid you to teach this neighbor's child. So you're a tutor, you're a coach. You are being paid to teach this child. If you use this method with your own child, it will work a lot. When your neighbor sends their child to you for you to tutor, you will not scold them right away, right? You will use methods and logics. You will try to guide them, try to explain it, and also allow them to make mistakes. And also you will encourage them, right? You might even give them small prizes. And they will encourage them to learn. But most of the time when a parent is teaching their own child, because of your urgency, you always have a mental set for blaming. But what about when you're teaching other people's children? They don't know how to learn it, and that's why they're here. That's why you are the tutor. Then you can develop a set of methods. All tutors and coach, whether it's swimming, archery, kung fu, they all have their own methods, even for people who learn piano. Some pianists can play the piano very well, but they can't teach their own child to play the piano. But their child can learn the piano from other coaches, other teachers. It's not the method, but it's your mindset. Master, there is a online friend who has a question. My daughter is about to have a large exam, but she is still very lazy and she's very slow. What can I chant? How can I chant for her? Yes, chant the sutra of being diligent. It's because your daughter doesn't have any goal. And in the family, your daughter doesn't have any financial pressure or other motivation. Even before the final exam, she is very lazy, and that's all because she doesn't have a goal. It's the same as the girl from the United States that we talked about earlier. So you should stimulate and remind your child that she should have a goal for life, and maybe then she can change her lazy way of living. There's no use chanting for her. It's a principle, it's a logic. So don't feel that chanting can solve all issues. There's another mother. She is very anxious and she's asking that, Master, how do we get the child to calm down? My child is only peaceful when she's sleeping. Otherwise, she is always talking. Everyone have their own personality and characters. And usually these are innate. But behaviors can be learned. If he is talking a lot, I would say that it's related. It's a learned behavior. It's not the innate character. If a child was born to talk all the time, maybe there is something wrong with her nervous system. But I would say that it's more likely that she is affected by her environment. What is her living environment like? If she hasn't been to school, then her only environment is the family. If she is in school, the teacher has to talk all the time, right? If she is talking a lot, I would feel that maybe she is trying to use a language and to use it to hide something or to make up for something. When she's talking a lot, could there be reasons that she is not getting good grades in school? Is she using language to affect how other people judge her? A normal, logical person, their speech is related to their mind. Only when they want to communicate something, then they will talk. If she is always talking like a toddler that is always crying and screaming, then they are making a statement. They are protesting that I want to use this crying and screaming to annoy you. If I want to buy this, but the parents doesn't want to buy it, then the toddler will scream and cry, and then the bystanders might laugh at the parent and pressure the parents into buying the toy. So when she's talking a lot, maybe she's trying to protest against the parents' blames, and maybe she's talking a lot so that you cannot talk, so that you don't have any time to ask her how is her day or how's the mark of her quiz. And usually such children might not be confident. And lastly, she might have learned it from her parents. One of the parents probably uses this method. A child has not visited the world yet, so she is affected by her parents or other elderlies in the family. If there are some person who use this method and gain benefit from it, then the child learns that this is a good method, so I can raise my voice and use this method to bother the family member so that they can get something. And these methods used by the child is to avoid scolding from the parents. They might have done something wrong or not very well in their academic life or in school. They either learn it from the parents or they learn it from themselves. This is their way of avoiding the parents. And so the parents need to be very careful. What is not right? What are they trying to avoid, to protest? Are they trying to avoid the parents asking about school? So in these situations, when your child is protesting against the parents, you guys are in a tug of war. Most parents, because they love their child, they would not scold the child anymore. But I think the method, I think for a parent, you should tell the child to stop talking and tell the child to calm down because I need to tell you something. If the child doesn't listen to you, then he is protesting against you. And you need to, if the child is not doing well in school in 6 months, then he won't be able to catch up and he might waste his life. So when you think about the result, should you put more effort on your child? You have to stop your child from talking and let him calm down and find out what's wrong with the child, and so that your child won't waste his life. Sometimes when the parents say that they don't know what to do, it's because you don't dare to do anything. If it's if your neighbor's child has this issue, you will know what to do. Because it's your child, you feel that the child is young, the child is kind, the child doesn't want to do any bad things. And so you are not using your wisdom and method to fight against the child. In this tug of war, you cannot give up as a parent. And so in children's education, when a toddler is crying on the floor when they take a bite of food and throw the dish on the floor, the child will start crying before the parents even do anything. A good parent might ask the child, "Have you finished crying? If you don't stop crying right now, I will do some method to punish you. I will use certain method to punish you. If you don't stop crying immediately, if you don't apologize, all right. Today, I'll draw a circle on the floor. You can sit here all day long." And the parent will actually honor the punishment. If one toddler cries and the parent gives up and gives the toddler everything, many parents would do this. You don't like noodles? I can give you bread. How are you raising your child? You're raising your child to be wasted. When you love your child too much, you are actually harming your child. It's too much pampering. It's not wise at all. When you're educating child, you need to have good method and wisdom. Next, let us chant. Let us chant Medicine Buddha's heart mantra. May everyone who chant become peaceful, auspicious, healthy, and have a long life. And most importantly, let's use our most sincere heart, most respectful heart. All right, let's get ready to start.
嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈。电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则，兰扎萨摩，嘎对梭哈，电塔吽贝堪则贝堪则，玛哈贝堪则。 萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨摩嘎对梭哈殿他吽贝堪则贝堪则 마하 베칸제 런자 사무 가디 소하 ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽贝堪则贝堪则玛哈贝堪则兰扎萨姆嘎迪梭哈ien他吽 被看见，马哈被看见，乱扎萨摩，嘎德梭哈，电塔红被看见，被看见。马哈被看见，兰扎萨摩，嘎德梭哈，电塔红被看见，被看见，马哈被看见。兰扎萨摩，嘎德梭哈，电塔红被看见，被看见，马哈被看见，兰扎萨摩。嘎德梭哈，电塔红被看见，被看见，马哈被看见，兰扎萨摩，嘎德梭哈。电塔红被看见，被看见，马哈被看见，兰扎萨摩，嘎德梭哈，电塔红被看见，被看见，马哈被看见，兰扎萨摩，嘎德梭哈。
All right, rub your hands together.
搓热之后搓脸。
Rub some warm and run your hands over your face.
回到7岁的样子。
You're back to 7 years old.
那个小脸蛋很好看，红扑扑的。
Your face is beautiful.
好，轻轻拍拍头。
Gently pat your head.
一切疾病和烦恼
All the illnesses, all your troubles and worries
像云雾一样
become
离开了
fog, become cloud.
飞起来了。
They drift away. They fly away.
好，再拍拍身体。
All right, pat your body.
观想
Visualize.
拍打在旧毛毯上
Visualize that you are patting on an old
尘土飞
blanket.
扬
All the dust flies with
疾
each
病消
tap.
失
All the illnesses disappear. All right, today's live session is completed. Let us meet again next time. Gentle reminder to these following lucky draw winners. Kindly email your name and address to yushu.contact@gmail.com in order for your gift to be sent out. Thank you.
小小的红点里，人生就此欢喜。我快乐了，我健康了，我幸福了，我美丽了。在茫茫人海之中，让我与你相遇。小小的红点里，人生变得神奇。我智慧了，我宽容了，我慈悲了，我自在了。因为有了你，生命变得更坚定，不忧忧虑。因为有了你，日子不再有哭泣，不再有恐惧。我快乐了。 小的红点滴，人生变得神奇。我智慧了，我宽容了，我自